Welcome to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green, the show where great dentistry meets great business. Listen in each week as we bring you an inspiring person who will share their story, ideas and business techniques to help you create a practice and a life you love. And now introducing your host, Dr. Jesse Green.
So I want to talk a little bit about case acceptance. Now, case acceptance is a big framework, and so I wanted to just share this framework with you really quickly as an overview. We talk about case acceptance in dentistry, but really in any other industry, we'd call it selling. And I know some people will take exception to that word, and that's okay, because I think what we need to be clear about when it comes to case acceptance or selling is it's simply a way of saying, how do we solve a problem for someone and get them emotionally engaged in the solution that's going to work for them. That's really it. So in this particular framework, what we're going to talk about is this sales process or case presentation process, and it begins at the beginning, not surprisingly, with the arrival and welcome. Then it progresses to things like a fireside chat, the clinical examination, wrap-ups, separate consultations or not, objection handling, presenting large cases, asking for referrals. But what we're going to focus in on today is how to present a simple case and to give you a structure to present a simple case really quickly, really easily, so that you know how to do this. Now, interestingly enough, when we start talking about frameworks that we might use in a front desk scenario, oftentimes I hear some of the clinical staff say, but I don't need to do this. And my response to that is that, well, you may not do it on a day-to-day basis, but there may be a time when you're at the front desk and you happen to pick up the phone, and equally you need to be able to support your front desk team in what they do. So all of these frameworks, even though it might not fall in your day-to-day operations directly, it's good for everyone to have a working knowledge of them. Similarly, for this particular framework, yes, this is a case presentation framework, but it's still really good for the front desk to know what's going on here, because you might get a phone call and someone will ask you about this, and this might be the framework you pull out of the jukebox. But typically it'll be used by the clinicians, typically. So let's talk a little bit about this. Before I do get into it, I want to talk a little bit about the paradox of choice. One of the things as human beings that we all say we want is choice. And we can have an unlimited choice of things, but there's been an incredible amount of research that shows that when we have too many choices thrown at us at once, it's the 10 tennis ball scenario, and we freeze and we don't make a decision at all. And so there was a wonderful TED talk around this where they highlighted a particular delicatessen, and what this delicatessen had was rows and rows and rows and rows of pickles and chutneys and relishes and all these different sorts of things. And it was this incredible array. Buses would come in for miles to see this array of gear. What ended up happening, though, is people would come and look at everything and not buy because they're just overwhelmed with the choice. And so what they ended up doing was reducing the line of stock that they held, and they found that sales dramatically increased. And it was simply by limiting choice. And if you think about this, the most valuable company on the planet, I'm not sure if it still is, but it certainly wasn't until recently, was Apple. First $1 trillion company. And yet, they have a closed operating system. You do not get the flexibility or the choice that you get with a PC. And yet, they're the most valuable company on the planet by limiting choice. So what this means in a case presentation context is if we sit down with a patient and we give them all of our knowledge all at once, we can fire hose them with options and scare the pants off them, and they just do nothing. They freeze, right? So we need to be able to give them a simple choice to make, followed by another simple choice, followed by another simple choice, and ultimately let them choose their own adventure in which way they want to go in terms of case presentation. So let me explain. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be starting high level. Just for example, let's just say that there's an upper right molar, a 1/6. It's got a large carious lesion in there. and we're deciding how we might want to treat that. So what we could say is, Bob, look, there's really two ways that we could do this. The first way is that we could put a large composite resin filling in there. Now, the advantage of that, of course, is it's going to be a bit cheaper for you. The disadvantage, however, is that we're asking that material to do a job it's not really designed to do from a strength perspective. It's also going to be hard for us to create a shape freehand that exactly mimics the shape of the pre-existing tooth structure and that is in harmony with the opposing tooth structure. The alternative would be to have an indirect restoration, which is made outside of the mouth. Now, the disadvantage of that, of course, is it's going to cost you a few dollars. It's going to take another visit to make, but the advantages are that it's going to last much longer, it's going to be stronger, we're going to be able to custom make it so it's exactly the right shape, it fits in with the adjacent tooth, it fits in with the opposing tooth, and we can do that. So which one of those options would work best for you? So what I've done in this scenario is I've presented the inferior option. I've started with the advantages of the inferior option and finished with the disadvantages. Then I've moved across to the superior option and I've started with the disadvantages and finished with the advantages. So in this case, they say, oh, look, I'd like an indirect restoration. Great. Well, when it comes to indirect restorations, there's really a couple of ways that we could go. We could do an inlay. Now, the advantage of an inlay is it's a bit smaller, therefore a bit cheaper. The disadvantage, though, is we're not protecting the remaining tooth structure as best we could, and which would then remain a little vulnerable to breaking. The alternative would be to put a crown on that tooth. Now, the disadvantage is that we're going to have to prepare the rest of the tooth, and it's going to cost a few extra $100. But the advantage is it's going to be stronger, it's going to last longer, it's going to look just like a natural tooth. You won't see a seam or a join line, and we'll be able to, essentially restore that to function and to aesthetics as quickly and as easily as possible. So we're going to have a crown. So, Bob, I'm taking this to the nth degree. Bob, when it comes to crowns, there's really a couple of different kinds you could have. We could have a crown that is made using a laboratory procedure or one that we make in-house. The advantage of the laboratory procedure is that it is, it's going to look good, it'll function pretty well. The disadvantage is it's going to take a lot of time to make. We're going to have to do that over 2 steps. You're going to have to go away with a temporary crown, which may or may not last. It may lead to some sensitivity while we're waiting for that crown to be made. And then, of course, we've got to wait for it to come back. The alternative, Bob, is we could use a same-day crown. Now, the disadvantage of that is you're going to be in the chair a little bit longer on the first day, but the advantage is it's going to be done, and it's not going to cost you an extra cent. So really all I've done, just using that hypothetical example, is I've stepped through inferior and superior options time and again. And each time I've presented the inferior option, I've led off with the advantage, I've led off with the advantages and finished with the disadvantages. And with the superior option, I've led off with the disadvantages and then finished with the advantages. And the reason I'm doing that is when it comes to the inferior option, the last thing I want them to hear is the disadvantages. And when I finish up with the superior option, the last thing I want them to have is the advantages.
Thank you for listening to the Savvy Dentist podcast with Dr. Jesse Green. For more free tools and resources, join the free Facebook group. Visit drjessegreen.com/Facebook. And for more episodes, visit drjessegreen.com/savvydentist.